So, after Brian's being at the whim of other breweries and having to be under their control and have to brew according to how their breweries operate, now at Stillwater's new facility, he has total control. You can do what you want. And the result is these fantastic new beers, which are truly Stillwater, brewed by Stillwater at Stillwater. Cannot get more Stillwater.
Yeah, one of the biggest hurdles I had in the doing the nomadic brewing was yeast. There's a lot of people, even the Saison yeast, a lot of breweries didn't want to introduce that. It's a very expressive yeast. If you don't clean your equipment properly, it can infect other beers, especially when I use, and I'm a big fan of Brettanomyces, which is a very no-no, it's very taboo, especially in big facilities. Nobody wants to bring Brett into their brewery. And I've always wanted, so some of these are original Stillwater beers, but reimagined the way I intended them to be at the beginning.
Brettanomyces beers are a big part of the Stillwater story for sure. And you've always liked to use that as an accent in your beers. And of the current batch, your favorite probably?
Shoegaze.
Shoegaze is probably my favorite also. If you don't mind, we're going to crack one of these. And that will continue the Brettanomyces story because this also has it, correct?
Yeah, the original batch of Shoegaze did not, because again, the facilities would not allow me to do that. So now that I have full control, I just make sure we clean the system very well after we use it, and it's been no problem so far, and I don't foresee any in the future. I think a lot of the fear of Brettanomyces is rooted in the wine industry, because
Smells so good, tastes so good. Dude, we've had, I don't know, 12 cans of this in the last week, maybe more.
At least.
And it still tastes as good as the first one, man. It's fruity and yet it's dry. It has Saison character, yet it has IPA character. I think it's got everything to please any beer palate, whether you're an IPA fan, Saison fan of dry beers, fan of fruity beers, fan of clean beers for damn sure. It works for all of us. Fantastic.
Yeah, so this one is talking about hybridizing styles. This is basically rooted in like the New England style pale ale category. I call it distorted farmhouse pale ale. We use, again, the standard, the core Saison or farmhouse ale yeast that I've been using for over a decade. And now I actually use a proprietary blend of 3 different Brettanomyces and the farmhouse yeast in conjunction to kind of create a very unique profile. It's one thing to be a Brettanomyces beer, but these Brettanomyces strains are not available to other brewers unless they culture them from one of the cans.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm calling it the controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos.
Because Brettanomyces is known as a wild yeast, but we have it tamed.
Yes.
Because it's isolated and stored in a laboratory. So a lot of times, like I was talking about the fear of Brett, and it comes from the wine industry, and it's more so when you're working in wood fermentation, and Brett really likes to embed itself. It'll embed itself into the wood. So winemakers always very much feared Brettanomyces infections, because once the Brett gets in there, it's impossible to get it out of the wood. In a brewing environment, we're using stainless steel, caustic chemicals.
Should be okay.
If
you clean your hoses properly.
Yes.
And
hot water, caustic, acid will kill Brettanomyces.
So that's one of the reasons, as you were saying, you couldn't do that in the old breweries, and now you can. So that's a huge advantage, right? To have the new brewery, you can use Brett when and how that you want to, and now you've got your strains laid out. You've also talked about postmodern beer a lot. What does that term mean to you, postmodern beer?
To me, it's it'd be one thing to say modern, but you could say like hazy IPA is a modern beer. I'm always looking into the future. The beers I'm creating are non-existent at the point. Like I'm not trying to duplicate other trends, other brewers. These are original concepts that I've been pushing now for more than 10 years. It hasn't always been the easiest journey. It takes a lot of explanation at times, but it's worked. And in fact, I didn't even, for the first 5 years of Stillwater, didn't even touch anything related to an IPA. I eventually did cave in and start making IPAs with some influence and nudging from my distributor back in the States. While it was commercially successful for the brand, I felt it was, as an artist, it was taking away from what I really wanted to be doing.
So this is a postmodern beer then, to go back to that. You would call this definitely postmodern.
Absolutely.
All right. So you have it here, folks. Your first distorted farmhouse pale ale. Yeah?
Yeah.
Not going to find it anywhere else.